Friends, family, and keepers of the faith, welcome to another Del Boy blog. And as ever, I'm going to date stamp this. It's year 5, blog 9, or in legacy numbers, blog number 217. And it's dated the 19th of April, 2026. And it's been a pretty good week weather-wise. It's the one thing that I usually talk about at the very beginning of a blog, and it's very sunny today. I wish my back and my leg was good enough for me to really make use of it. I've tried to incorporate a little bit of gardening, believe it or not, into my stretching exercises, which helped at the beginning, but started to stiffen up again. So I sort of stopped towards the end of the week, which was good because it started to rain really from Thursday. The weather's really improved today, so that was really quite good. But we'll talk a little bit more about my week later on. It's been another challenging one, but on the most part, it's been quite enjoyable. I think what improved it was there was a subject that came up in Ian Hill, the Rambling stream on Wednesday, where we talked about hypertension. One of our friends that came into the room has just been diagnosed hypertensive. And as many know that when I talk in this blog, stress is something that's become a friend and an enemy to me. You know, it's most people know now about the heart attack I had. Most people sort of know, because this is not a blog, it's a diary, sort of know what I went through with that heart attack and some of the stresses that have occurred afterwards. So it was great to sort of participate in giving some advice, some of the pitfalls that you get with stress. And I really don't want to go into it now because it's something that you can go over and see my friend's live stream. It's about halfway through. It doesn't take long to find it. And I think Ian, being the worldly wise man that he is, I could see him nodding his head when I was talking, recognise the triggers. And I think because he knows me so well, he knows what some of the stresses that I've been under. And I think he found it interesting, the routines I do to de-stress myself. And I can't help but turn around and say venting is a very good thing to do if you don't have a family base or a friend base for you to talk to. Talking is very important. Your body is very much a kettle with a plug on top, and if you don't have a release mechanism, to remove that plug at the top, you're going to explode. And all that's happening is that you're putting pressure on your heart. You're shortening your life expectancy. So I really do have a lot of knowledge in that area, because not only have I seen it happen to others, but it happened to me. And the warning signs I ignored. I ignored them all. Some of it wasn't my fault, don't get me wrong, but a lot of it I could have done better. So there's no finger pointing. I hate finger pointing. Finger pointing does nothing. If people don't say what I do, I put it down to the fact that I haven't explained it properly. I don't put it down, a lot of it to other people. I do find that some people were not tolerant, but again, you can't, there are things you can change and things you can't. So I always look at it that it's my fault. And that's probably one of the reasons why I get stressed. And it's something that even now in my 50s, and I'm talking late 50s as well, by the way, I'm closer now to 60 than I am 50. So I look at it that I should be wise enough now to have a thicker skin than I do. But anyway, let's get the news out of the way, shall we? It's all bad news, bar one. The first one says Prime Minister Keir Starmer is under intense pressure to resign due to continued reports on the appointment of Peter Mandelson as the UK ambassador for USA. The PM stated he did not know Mandelson failed the Foreign Office's vetting process, which was ignored during his appointment. Now, how a Prime Minister doesn't know the ticking order of somebody of high importance. In other words, what we're supposed to believe is Keir Starmer had a piece of paper stuffed under him and it said this, and he just ticked the end and he didn't bother reading it. Now, if that's the case, God help us, because this is our Prime Minister that's making decisions for us in regards to the war, everything that's going on in the world, monetary things, etc. If he's just going to rely that the piece of paper above is all above board and a ticket and put his name at the bottom, God help us. You can't run, you couldn't be an accountant and do that. You know what I mean? Just, oh yeah, I had that accountant, my friend do that, I'm sure he did it right, tick. This is somebody's life and their accounts. You've got to double check it. You've got to, you can't rely on people. They could have made a mistake. So yeah, that's my opinion on that. I don't usually have many opinions. Other ones, let's have a look. The UK remains concerned over shortages of essentials like fuel, food and medicine based on the war in Iran and the closure of the Strait of Hormuz. Yeah, it's all over the news. This is all about ceasefires, keeping it open, dredging mines, all that sort of stuff. Papers are full of what's the UK position on it, what are we doing, and all we hear is Starmer saying we're not being drawn into the war, it's not our war, but we'll defend ourselves. Great. But unfortunately, a lot of people don't believe that over there, so we're drawn in regardless. Now, if you are drawn in regardless, what do? Well, that's why we have a Prime Minister. You make that decision. So that's all I can say about that. The next one is counter-terrorism are investigating an arson attack on a former Jewish site in North London. Yes, this was on the news. It was, I think, in Finchley, which I know really well because that's the road that takes you onto the M1, which I used to use to get me down to London many, many years ago before my main motorway connected me to other ways of getting into London. So I used to come down the Finchley Road and come into London, and you ended up at Hanger Lane, I think it was. But it was my friend that lived in Finchley Road. I think it was Sarah Smith, I think her name was. This was back in the Amiga days. So it was very easy. I got onto the motorway straight down. It ended at the Finchley Road, and she lived near the Odeon, which was right at the bottom of Finchley Road, and it was a great place to visit because there were lots of food outlets along that road, plus there was a Richer Sounds, and Richer Sounds is where I used to get a lot of my electrical equipment. So yeah, that takes me back. That was brilliant. And the only good news story, it says the Lyrids meteor shower is expected to light up the UK night sky this week. Anything to do with space, the sky, all of that sort of stuff I love. Maybe a photographic opportunity if the weather remains good. So a meteor shower, yeah, that'd be really, really interesting. So that's the news. And when it comes to me, the week and so forth, not a lot has been happening. You may look at me as being, my demeanour as being a bit low, and I'll explain that. But I've been exercising my back. I've been doing a lot more walking. I've been doing a lot more stretching. I've been sitting down in this chair and getting out of it and back in to see how long I can sit for, because work is important and I need to get back to work. I'm intending for that to be tomorrow. I'll be talking to work in regards to the best way that I can sort of like come back to work, because it might require maybe a phased return, but it's happening at a time where we're now 2.5 weeks in, 3 weeks maybe, into the carers being here, and we've got another 3 weeks, and my sister goes in for her operation where she'll be out of commission for a week in a week and a half's time. So those carers are going to become very, very important. And it also means that I'm going to be the sole person looking after my mum while my sister recuperates. And we were talking about it, which is why this blog's being done a little bit later, about how this is going to work. You know, what time she needs to get here, what time she needs to go away, and what needs to be given as information to her while she recuperates, etc., etc. So yeah, we had a lot to talk about this morning, and so yeah, this is all based around my mum. Now my mum, she remains sort of like as buoyant as a person with vascular dementia can be, but if my demeanour seems a bit low, it's the last couple of days I've noticed that she's been very, very tired. And, you know, we always ask sometimes some questions like, Mum, do you know who I am? Why do you use this word? Do you know my sister's name? Etc., etc. And the last 2 days she struggled to find my name. So that, along with a lot of other issues that are going on in regards to, say, my YouTube channel, say, work, my health, it's become quite stressful this week. And to have your mum not recognise your name, you can imagine, is a constant upset, is the best word I can use. And YouTube then sometimes becomes my joy. And if it becomes not very joyful or stressful, then of course it becomes a problem. And this is where that thicker skin comes in. And I was so happy on Wednesday that I opened up a little bit more than I do in this diary. Remember, this is a diary, not a blog, but I call it a Vblog because there's no real term for diary in YouTube's list of things. So, you know, you have to understand why it's called a Vblog, because people recognize that. If you put V diary, they'd go, what's that? And most people would look at it and go, what's that as well? So you give it its nearest parameter, if you see what I mean. So what have I been concentrating on? Well, once you get the morning routine out the way and my sister takes over, it's all been about thinking about me a little bit. So I've been doing the walking, doing the shopping. I've been concentrating on some of my hobbies. And I've been thinking about, I could do a video on that. And then I've been thinking twice about releasing it, because sometimes things can come across negative, and that knocks me back, because I'm doing something that I hope is enjoyed. And you know, these are the things where I need to just do it. Just do it, because, you know, people will be people, I suppose. I just know that the ones that are my true friends, the ones I mention all the time, they've got my back. And that's all that matters. I'm doing it really for me first, family second, friends third, the rest fourth. And don't look at that, if you're not a subscriber or a person that hits like or dislike, as, you're the weakest link, because everybody is important to me, you know, and I want that to be well known, that people are important, their opinions mean something to me, and I always like constructive things, which is why I value people's comments. Destructive people that hide, not interested in you. I will say that, because as much as you're a human being, you've got to act like one and not hide behind a false name or something. It's a lot of people recognize that as being just awful, to be quite honest, and you're not worthy of anybody's time. But I always look at those people that, well, they're people, and you know, if I could help them, I would. If I knew they were, I'd change or I'd explain. But you can't do that, you know, if they hide behind a facade. And for those, I then start feeling not angry anymore, feel sorry that I can't do more for them. You know, maybe I'm looking at it all wrong. These are just, they're in my mind right now, and I know as a person, I want to help. It's why, in many ways, some of the most joyous times for me being at work has been me teaching people, you know, or educating people, or saying what I do, or talk about me, or whatever, to give a life experience away. Something that your mum and dad would do because you're their flesh and blood, you know, as growing up, you know, you're their son or your daughter, or whatever, you know, depending on, you know, how you look at gender. You're a loved person, and so they go through life experiences and pass those life experiences on. If you don't have a wife or a girlfriend or a child to pass that on to, then you pass it on to others, friends, and you say, oh, hang on a minute, I went down that road, don't do that. And I'll tell you the reason why. It's this, that, the other. Or you'd go, oh, thumbs up, and you'll have to tell me what your experience was with that. You know, I like to as well soak up information from others. That's something that you don't get an awful lot of. I must admit, if you watch a YouTube video and somebody's playing a game, they don't usually turn around and say, at the end, when I'm looking at this, I liked it. You know, and the reason I liked it was this. You can see and experience that they liked it or they hated it because of the you know, sometimes the video is incredibly short, like, I ain't playing that shit again. Excuse my French, but, you know, you can certainly gain that. But I like to sort of like, you know, when you used to, let's talk about gaming for a moment. You used to buy a magazine and it'd have screenshots and you'd read about what the game's all about. You'd go to the boxes where individuals would say, this is what I liked about it. And then right at the end, there's a scoring system and you can see what they thought about it there. A conversation can incorporate all of those things, or watching a YouTube video. But you miss that at the end. Yeah, 5 stars, whatever, right? And I always tried to do that. Sometimes in my videos, sometimes I'd avoid it totally because the game would be so different that I wouldn't quite know what to say. But in the end, I usually turn around and go, oh yeah, really enjoyed that. Definitely, like that Sectori game that I played. You know, I said, oh, it's a trin shooter. Oh my God, look, it's all changing, all of this. Oh, I like those neon graphics. That sound is thumping. Oh yeah, I'm crap at it, but thumbs up like that. You know what I mean? I think that incorporates enough. Maybe I don't do enough of the, I'd give that 4.5 stars out of 5, whatever. I go to Chronologically Gaming for that. He's good at that. So there is that on it. So yeah, I think what we'll do now, because yeah, well, I mean, we're ahead of the game. I'll just wind it all up. So Mum's been like a new norm. I've seen her getting changed. I'm constantly learning all of that. She's been comfortable. We had a bit of a scare this morning where the mattress, which is a compression mattress, wasn't working, and I had to trail back all the wires and work out why it weren't working. I think it was because the power tripped and it's got one of those special plugs at the end. I think that's what it was. Can't tell though specifically. So Mum's been okay. From my point of view, it's been exercise, but I'm still in pain. You'll still see me moving left and right, which I know probably infuriates people. Please bear with me. I'm getting better. And, you know, I go back to work next week, so there really isn't much else to talk about other than the highlight was talking about hypertension in Ian Hill, the Ramblings stream on Wednesday. That's the highlight of the week. The rest has been analytical, looking inwards at myself, which is a bit boring, really. And I've given all that information. So we'll move out to the shout-outs, which, you know, I really enjoy. And, you know, everybody's important here. I give a shout-out to, first of all the people that never left a comment. Thank you very much. If you did a thumbs up, or you watched the video, so the watching numbers, all of those people, thank you. It's an honor to sort of like partake and give you some of my experiences, which you can take or diminish or just be nosy and watch. That's great as well. To the people that have left a comment, thank you. Now these people made me feel like I'm wanted and needed. Brilliant. Thank you. And you've asked, I'm bound sure there'll be some questions there that we're going to get to. That'll be brilliant as well. Looking forward to that. And, you know, there isn't much else to say other than I recognise that some people can't leave a comment at the moment. They've got very busy lives. Things are going on as well in people's own lives or their family around them. And from that point of view, it just adds more emphasis to the people that left a comment, because things like that are happening in their lives and they still found the time. So every single one in that group that I've mentioned, and that covers just about everybody, thank you. Thank you. It really does make me feel very proud to be here. And, you know, I've always said it, one of the traits that I need to have is needed and wanted. If you don't have that in your life and you don't have the stability of, you know, friends and family around you, you're going to sink fast, and darkness is going to fill your brain to the point of, what's the worth of me being here anymore? Everybody has a worth to be here. And I don't care who you are, you have a worth. It's what you do with your life that makes it worthwhile, right? You were born into this world. Make use of it. That's all I can say with that. So, no particular order then. Let's do the shout out, shall we? So we've got Martroid, Carl Todd, Ian Hill the Ramblings, Colin Jones, aka Ponder, Robert's Retro Gaming, LFC Gamer and Vlogs, and Wee Bob of Wee Bob Art fame. Every single one of those I've left a comment. Hopefully I haven't missed any. I will do a refresh, but I'm pretty sure that's all there. If not, I'm going to read out your comment, so you'll recognise the name there, and I'll go, oh look, I missed one. I'm not infallible. So there is that. So I'm going to get cracking on. And the first one that comes up, because it's not in any particular order, this, is Wee Bob. Oh, I love Wee Bob. He comes to Ian Hill, the Rambling stream as well, talks about films. But he's got his own channel, digital art, some gaming, some films, TV, memories, all of that sort of stuff. He opens up. I'd love to know more about him, but not everybody does a blog or a diary, do they? But I know enough, thinking like that, to know that he's a good guy, you know? And let's see what he's put. He's put, bit late with my comment this week. One of our dogs was away getting surgery to fix a leg issue. Oh, wow, man. That does bring memories. A lot of them bad because all of our dogs that we've owned are dead. But when it comes to family, I remember my dad's brother, which is my uncle. He's had no end of dogs because he worked on he lived on a farm. It's an environment, which I've mentioned before, how much that environment meant to me as a child. And he had a dog, I think, called Patch. Remember him? And he was a dog that did everything. He went rabbiting with my uncle and all that sort of stuff. But he crossed a road and got run over, and his back legs went. Had an operation, and he was never the dog that he was before, and it was so sad. But like anything, a loved animal, we kept him till old age or until pain was enough to say, I can't have you suffering anymore. So, yeah, Patch, brilliant dog, lovely dog as well. Loved being petted and fussed. Loved to be outdoors, running around like a headless chicken, I tell you. Whoosh, just went, you know, and recognised your voice, whistling, all that sort of stuff. Brilliant dog. So, yeah, I feel for you there. I hope everything goes well. So you carry on. So I spent all day yesterday just making sure she wasn't jumping around. All the best wishes to you and your mum. Thank you so much for that. And a question for today. If you see this one, what would be your favourite game where you play the role of a non-human but a creature that exists, e.g. stray or spider, for example? Wow. That exists is probably the hardest thing, because I could go down the route of, I don't know, Guild Wars, which was my favourite MMO, and you had all non-human things. They were like half like leopards or beasts, like bears and things. Or you had necromantics or whatever. Engineers, which were more elven or orc-like. But they don't exist, do they? So that's bad. And I could mention a recent game I've been playing, Astrobot. That's a robot. Does it exist? No. That's a bit difficult, isn't it? See, another favourite game of mine is a game called Child of Light. Have I got that down here somewhere? Yeah, look. Here we go, look. Child of Light. I played that a lot. You were sort of a fairy. Now you probably think to yourself, what are you playing a fairy type game for? But it's not that. It was the game mechanics. I really liked the mechanics in that game. And there are so many, isn't there? I mean, you've got the Zelda series on Nintendo. I mean, what are you in that other than a sort of like an elf type creature? But again, you don't exist. Now, I did play a spider in a PS1 game. I didn't get on with it, though. The control mechanics were bloody awful. I've played Spider-Man in a lot of games, but that's a comic book character. It's a human bitten by a radioactive spider, and so I've got spider-like powers. Again, not real. There are games, aren't there? I know that there was a friend of mine who loved Spyro. That's a dragon. Do dragons exist? No. So that's useless. I've played Monty on the Run, a mole. That would be a good one. There you are. Monty Mole. That was a character. It's non-human. Jumping about, somersaulting, doing all sorts of stuff. Thumping great Rob Hubbard soundtrack in it. That's a good one to talk about. Yep. A game came out a couple of years ago where you were a cat. I never got to play it. It looked interesting, but then I looked at all the reviews and they said, "Oh, you're led too much in the game. You know, you get to an edge and a white light would appear, so to tell you that you'd fall if you were to go any further, and a white light would appear where you need to jump to. That's handhelding. No, I don't like that. So I didn't buy that. I forgot what the game was called, but you're a cat, and it was done by a very well-known software publishing team. I think they did the Red Dead Redemption games and Grand Theft Auto games. It got a good following, but I never picked it up because of the handheld holding things. I suppose the hardest thing for me to do is that every game I've ever played has been a human. You know, you're a marine, or in a war field, or you're a secret agent and you're somersaulting around and searching like 007. You're a James Bond agent. You're a spaceman. You're marooned here, there. You're crafting this, that, the other. So playing a bird or an animal or a fish or a non-human mammal, like a kangaroo or something like that, doesn't really come into it too much. Every time that I thought of myself that I'm in a spaceship protecting the Earth, I've always thought it's me, a human. So it is a difficult one. I got great enjoyment with Jeff Minter games. One was Ancipital. What is Ancipital? What is that? It's a half ram, half human, so that doesn't exist. But I tell you what, one of my favourite games of Jeff Minter's was Sheep in Space. You're a laser sort of like spitting sheep. And another one was Revenge of the Mutant Camels, in the very early days of my Commodore 64, where you're a laser spitting camel. And Metagalactic Llamas battle at the edge of time on my VIC-20 as a llama. So all of those, I could probably just say, look, just pick a very early Jeff Minter game, and that would be my favourite non-human character that I played playing games, because it was also a time where everything in the world seemed new to me. I played a game and I didn't blink an eyelid that I was a sheep in it. All I recognised was, wow, isn't this fun? But if otherwise, I'd be choosing characters out of Guild Wars, Morrowind, all of those role-playing games that I played. So we'll go with any creature out of a Jeff Minter game. It's going to be fun. I like those. Moose, he played Moose Life. You ever played that on a VR headset? You'll know what I mean. So yeah, loads and loads of creatures to think of and speak of there. But all of those other games I mentioned, Guild Wars, Astrobot, Zelda, Child of Light, brilliant games. I loved them, at least anyway. So thanks very much for that. Now, I am finding it difficult with my back at the moment, so I'm just going to take a quick pause. It won't be anything to you. I do apologise for that. I'll be back in a moment and I'll continue reading things out. Won't be a minute. And now I've tried to get myself more comfortable, we'll continue. And I just want to say salute to wee Bob. And he's done some work this week on YouTube, and I'll talk about that later on. So I'll say salute, and we'll move on to LFC Gamer and Vlogs, who again is a YouTube channel creator who I constantly watch. He's not done something for about a few weeks now, but when he does do stuff, I'm totally there for him. It's absolutely brilliant what he does. So if you haven't heard me mentioning him for a couple of weeks or so, it's only because he hasn't done much, but he's always in my thoughts. He's put Hi again, Dal. Hope you and your mum are doing much better this week. As always, sending my highest regards and congrats to Coventry for getting promoted back into the Premier League after 25 years. It's certainly been too long for the Sky Blues. However, Blackburn gave you a good test. Yes, it's been an exciting week. I did watch the game on Friday. It was I will say right now, I don't hold back on this, whether something has been a really good game or it's been poor. And they played poorly, awfully. But did they deserve to get the point that they got? Yes. They needed 1 point. They got a draw. That meant that they were promoted. You have to look at the year as a total, and the quality that they've had this year has been really good. You couldn't have asked for a better start, and that start gave them encouragement and confidence. Confidence is a major thing that a lot of people forget. If you win a title, you start off on a high, but you also start off with oh my God, can we maintain this level? But sports people have that inner ability, I think, sometimes to A, lift themselves up, but B, continue something and go, I've got that ability to just keep doing this. As long as everybody around me has also got that type of enthusiasm, brilliant. That's why I can look at teams that are at the bottom and feel for them. I'm not a big supporter, say, of Tottenham Hotspur, say. They're in the news at the moment a lot. They're in the bottom of the Premiership, and I don't really follow too much of the Premiership because my team's in the Championship, but now they're in the Premiership again, so I'll be looking a lot more. And I see them and I go, wow, how did they get like that? It was only a couple of years ago they got a new stadium. They had all high hopes of being higher up that Premiership table that they were so missing from because of the likes of Man City, say, or Chelsea, or, at the moment it's Arsenal. And what you have to look at is go, well, what happened? Did they lose belief? Was it a couple of bits of bad luck? Is it injuries? Well, all of those things affect other teams as well. So what was it? Was it their manager? They've currently got, from what I can tell, a top-notch manager, and they're in the bottom three. And I watched the game that was on just yesterday. I was watching it with my mum, and they got the first goal, and I was going, oh, this is going to be great. I was listening to the commentary before the game, and they were saying they need to kick up the arse. And if they get that goal at the beginning, it'll give them the confidence. But then I saw the other side. I think it was Brighton. And they scored. And you just saw them drop. And then they lost focus. And then they got another goal. And then there was a goal 3 minutes from the end from the other side, and it was a draw. And you could see that it was not enough, and they've then got to go to next week, and there aren't enough next weeks. They've got to continue. Now, the commentary at the beginning was, maybe it'll be good for Tottenham to go down because it'll be a wake-up call to other people in that league that you are not safe and that you need to continue putting 100% effort in, which made me think, so has Tottenham then not put enough effort in? What is it? And I haven't got to the bottom of what it is, but I'm not a good enough sports analyst for me to continue this conversation for any length of time. The LFC can. Wow, he eats up this stats info and reasons why things are like they are, like anybody's business. So when he turns around and says, it's been too long, yeah, it has. And you can look at things as being luck, and you can look at things as being leadership, and you can look at all sorts of things. But at the end, I turn around and go, confidence was the thing that did Coventry the favour this year. And I should think, the other years, there's been too many things going on in the background that have taken the spotlight out of the actual game. It's the game that you should be interested in, not going there going, oh, we haven't got a stadium this week. We've got to play here. We've got to play there. The news article is this is happening to our manager or this player or whatever. The emphasis is on that. Oh, put it to one side. They pushed and pushed and pushed under a lot of scrutiny. Just around Christmas time, even I was going, they've got a 10-point buffer and now it's down to 3. That's bad. And they could throw it all away. But they turned it around. All it takes is something or someone to turn it around. And they did it. And they got promoted. And that's all that matters. Now, I'd like them not to rest on their laurels. I'd like to see them get the cup for actually being top of that league. And that's still within their grasp to do that. But they've got to win games. They can't just go, we'll settle with a draw as long as we don't lose. The other teams are now pushing so hard that the team that is second could suddenly win that league, and it'd be the wrong thing. Don't throw that away. Keep up that momentum. Every game still means something. Celebrate in 3 or 4 weeks' time. That's all you got to do. Just think of it as being like me being at work and thinking about how far away I am from having a week off. And you go, that's when I can celebrate. That's when I can relax, have pints, not think about things. But until then, you're at work. You're doing the job that you love. You do it. So that's great. So you continue. Aside from you, thank you very much, Mainmeister, 20th Century Gaming, and a few of my other favourites, I've come to the realisation most streams on YouTube are a complete waste of my time, and I have distanced myself away from a good chunk of them. I wish I'd have known this from the beginning, but we live and learn, and I feel better for it. I don't want to be in an environment where I'm interacting with people who have inappropriate and, quite frankly, disgusting attitudes. Things like sexism, harassment, and pointless arguments are not for me. That's the side of YouTube I don't particularly like, but I'm more than thankful for the likes of yourself. Well, thank you so much. That's really good. I do a diary, and I do talk about some of those subjects, but I always end them, hopefully, with a, do I feel badly about these people or channels or whatever? No. They go down their own path. They know what works for them. If it's not for me, I stop watching. If I stop watching, it's because of that. It's for no other reason. And I therefore follow my own trail and put my efforts into those people that I see just want to embrace their hobby. Obviously, insights into things that are different, that's affecting them, but on the whole, this is their hobby. This is what they want to partake knowledge on or give you as an entertainment value, and they go with it. And I can totally wholeheartedly go with Mainmeister, 20th Century Gaming, others like Ian Hill, The Ramblings, Muckman, Movies, Wee Bob, Steve's Still Plays Games, Robert's Retro Gaming, Colin Jones, all of those that you'll hear about at the end. They're all important to me. They break up my week, and I love them for it. And, you know, that's the thing that you follow, because you don't need the other stuff, because it's not that it's bad, it's just it's not for you, and you then move away from it. You know what I mean? It could well be that they'll pick up and change, but if it's continual, if the questions are always the same, if it's always the same subject matter, and it's not something that you want because you were more interested in the variety, and it's now wholeheartedly going in a direction that you'd like to learn, but it's not really your thing, then you're holding on to something that is a waste of time. For me, The only thing that's stopping me doing more movie reviews, game playing, is my mum. And that's going to change. You know it's going to happen. I love it too much. It's why I hold on to keeping a look on LFC's channel. So there you are. Totally agree with that statement, and everything that you said there about me, thank you so much. It's nice that that comes across. Hopefully other people see that as well. It can get bogged down with other crap, so I totally get it. So you continue. Only one question this time. What are some of your favorite late releases for the Amiga circa 1993, 1996? Wow, that's a 3-year chunk of total change for me as I move towards the PC. But one game I think is brilliant is Rough and Tumble from Graph Gold. Now, what a channel what a software house Graph Gold was. Brilliant. Which is well-made run and gun platformer. It's really challenging at times, but leaves you wanting more. It also has a great soundtrack by Jason Page. Yeah, he did some good stuff. Other amazing late titles I could list are Worms, Uridium 2, Slam Tilt, and Super Skid Marks. Yeah, now Super Skid Marks, I played that a lot. Worms, more on the PC. Uridium 2. Now, I'm like that with Uridium 2 because it really is just a 16-bit version of Uridium, but I totally get why it's there. Slam Tilt, yeah, I did load that up. Should have played it more, I think. But let me have a think. Now, remember, I was at a stage where I was moving, and the Amiga 4000 was the last computer I had in the Amiga range. But I only had it for 6 months before I sold it and moved to a PC. I recognized that I wasn't doing all that ray tracing that much anymore, so the power wasn't needed, and the games weren't adapting for faster machines. You could still run them on the lowest ebb machine, which was the Amiga 500, even at that particular stage. So there was some highlights. And some of the games I'll mention here, because I've got to think of them, I will have bought on the PC and probably played them more there than I did on the Amiga. So let me think. Yeah, so I was heavily moving into real-time strategy, so I can't help but mention Dune 2. Played that on the Amiga. Was that 1993, 94? I think it was. I remember getting the big box, getting it home, opening it up. Yeah, played that a lot. And that therefore brings to mind UFO, Enemy Unseen, is it? Enemy Unknown, Enemy Unseen, Enemy Unknown, I think it was. Love that game. You had a big world. You had a little task force put into a little area where the aliens were. Took turn-based steps to destroy those. But I bought that on the PC after I sold my Amiga. Same with Dune 2, and it'll be the same for the next one because I loved Bullfrog. And their last, I think, game I bought was probably Syndicate. But again, I played it more on the PC than I did the Amiga. And that continued when I was starting to play things like Dungeon Keeper and Magic Carpet and theme park stuff. Yeah, the theme park stuff in particular, like Theme Hospital. Oh, I loved Theme Hospital. But when it comes to simple stuff, the Amiga, I did buy Banshee. Nice little shoot 'em up. Some people say it's one of the better shoot 'em ups because it used the new graphic chipset of the A1200. I had an A4000, so of course I had that chipset. So I did play that. The Alien Breed series, was that before 1993? I think the later ones, I think there was one called Tower Assault. I did buy that. So that was a good read. And then we move into what the PC was good at the beginning of me buying a PC, and that was those Scum type games, those adventure ones, like Indiana Jones and Sam and Max and Day of the Tentacle. There was one called Simon the Sorcerer. Played that on the Amiga, and I'm pretty sure that's 1993, 4. And I can't not mention the game Walker by Psygnosis, because I loved the way that looked. I loved all these little creatures, the little army that was so well animated and chucked things at you, and you were in this big, really well animated sort of like Ed 203, is it? Walker robot type thing, and you tilted your shot mechanism, and it was almost like a sideways version of a mini game in Beachhead 2, where you're in a gun pill type system and you fired your bullets towards the walls where the army were coming down. Walker was a fire your tilt mechanism and shoot the little army that were coming at you, but it was sideways. So yeah, those are probably I would choose, but I think you've chosen probably the best ones. Super Skid Marks, Worms, those are definite. Probably beaten all the titles I mentioned. But Dune 2, I think I played the most before I kissed my Amiga goodbye, before I got back into it with emulation and the Mister as well, the FPGA system that I've got. So hopefully there's some good titles there that have made you think again, because I think SimCity is before the night. See, you've given me a very short period of time, and I think SimCity was before 1993, as was SimAnt and all the others. So I played the Sim games on the PC from then on, but I can't forget that they started there on the Amiga for me. So most definitely salute, my friend, and I look forward to some more stuff from you. And we get then to Ian Hill, the Ramblings, my friend who is a big supporter of me and I'm a big supporter of him. And we do a live stream on Wednesday and we have friends that come in and we just have great chats on all sorts of subjects. And as I said, we were talking about hypertension, as well as all the film and TV stuff that you could possibly want to talk about was there. And let's see what my friend Ian has got to say. So he's put, "Hi Del Boy, hope you are feeling much better physically. And of course, your mum, hoping she's had a settled week. Another great live on Wednesday. I'm sure you enjoyed it as much as I did. We had some great discussions, and we did. In my week, in terms of my health, was very positive. The healing in my legs and feet continued. The nurse was pleased. Soon, I think, I will be in compression wraps. I got a letter from the government asking me for my bank details for my state pension. Made me think August is now getting nearer, which can't come quick enough for me. I can understand that. Hope everything goes well for you there. And I hope being in the pensional state, you don't feel age is affecting you, because you're a very sprightly man, my friend Ian. As much as I love the fact that I think your Father Christmas at Christmas, and you spent all those years selling fish fingers to us when in your guise of Captain Birdseye, but that's a different story. Watched more films and indulged myself in watching the original Star Wars trilogy. I enjoyed it a lot. For me, it's better than the prequels and sequels. It's fun, interesting, though the TV Star Wars is much more adult and serious, like Andor, which was the best of them, along with The Mandalorian. Yeah, I don't think anybody could cite that Andor and The Mandalorian had very big high points. I think they only got to season 2 of Andor. Shame. Could have gone a lot more. I really enjoyed my time with Andor. I remember that. And yeah, the original trilogy. You didn't say whether you missed the older effects or whether you like the newer effects, but regardless of the effects, it's the story, isn't it? And I think the first 3 had much better stories. I will say that. I think the others suffer from convolution. I think the prequels were probably harder to do because they had to adapt themselves to meet the 3 stories that we knew so well. When you head into unknown territory, you've got nothing to hide behind. You will win based on the story, and those last 3 films were very miss more than hit for me. A lot to like, but that's because of the world that it's in, not for any performance or story that was contained. Yeah, I think that's how I look at the original Star Wars trilogy. You continue. Also enjoyed watching Glory, a 1989 film starring Michael Broderick, Denzel Washington and Morgan Freeman. It was set in the American Civil War and about the formation of a black regiment. It was based on a true story. The ending was very powerful, and yes, it was. I bought Glory and I talked about Glory on your channel when I got it and said how much I loved watching it, and it'd been far too long before I sat down and did that. So that was brilliant. So you got a question. It says, my question this week is, why do you think conspiracy theories exist? There's too many I see on YouTube. It's sad, but I think a small number of people do take them seriously. Yeah, like flat earthers and all of that sort of stuff. I have really very little time for them. But why do conspiracy theories? I suppose it's because we have a natural mistrust. So when something comes out and they try to explain it away, we naturally think that doesn't ring true. I don't believe that. It's too outer spacey in regards to my belief factor on it. So I think conspiracy theories are there for that particular reason, which is we just have a very, in our very nature, we question everything that we see and do. And they just want to prove themselves right when we debate it. So yeah, that's really a very simple answer to a very complex question, really. You then end it with all my best wishes to you and your mum, and have a reet grand time. And it goes reet grand time like that. Loved your comment. Thank you so much. And it's made me think. Food for thought. Absolutely brilliant. Thank you. We'll move on in just a moment. And I hope that was a good answer about conspiracy theories, because I think it's more to do with, you'll always, when you have a question, have usually two sides. And the pessimistic side, usually the inquisitive side, makes us think differently about things. So many things, the moon landing, whether who shot JFK, all of that sort of stuff. The pessimism in us think, yeah, that's hidden. All of that sort of stuff. I'm never going to know the truth, of what went on. So yeah. Like I say, there could be even conspiracy theories with individuals on YouTube, including myself. So, what can you say about it? You can only be honest, which is what I am, about everything. I put my hands up and go, hey, some of that was me. You know what I mean? Silence usually makes things different. But anyway, Ian Hill, what a great guy. Go and see his channel. Definitely go and watch a few of them. See if you like them. possibly become a subscriber. I definitely am. And you know, I always, hopefully sometimes I give a comment. It's been difficult these last months. I'm hoping that will change and I'll be able to spur him on, because he's a great guy and his channel's brilliant. But we'll move on now to Carl Todd, great friend of the channel. He's put, "Hi Del. Well, Coventry's position was confirmed this week, so I hope this was a sign of a good week for you and your mum." Well, we'll see. It only happened on Friday, so we're talking about this next week. Maybe it will be the positive thing that makes me go, yeah, things can be better. I hope that things have settled down with the nurses regarding what time they arrive and consistency with the pads, etc. That's... yeah, not totally covered with the beginning. I'll give you an answer for you because you gave a direct one there. The pads, oh my God. Even the occupational health team that turned up this week turned around and said that the left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing. We mentioned to them that we've got a load of pads that are useless to us. In fact, you can have them back. We don't want them. We're not exactly going to sell them on eBay. And all we'd like them to do is swap them for the pads that we need. And the hospital have always recognised that with my mum being now less mobile, she needs a different type of pad, because with a broken leg, trying to pull them over two legs like a pair of knickers, you know, or underpants for us men, while you're lying down, you've got to raise your legs and pull them through and put them over your backside while your backside is actually on the bed. You have to turn people over left and right and constant that, and changing your clothes. Just imagine putting pajamas on to hide your modesty while you're in bed all the time. It's why people in hospitals wear gowns. But we're in the process of trying to get my mum out of bed when she's got the energy to do so. We don't want to get into the habit of 5 days goes by and she doesn't get out of bed. That won't exercise her leg. So yeah, we're in that quandary, and trying to wash and clean your teeth and have cups of tea and eat while being in these beds. Now, the beds are lovely because they have that mechanism to put yourself up. But you imagine your mother that doesn't have a knife. She's got a fork. She uses her fingers to put things on and eat. And it's assistive eating. It's what they call. And it has to be chewable because she has trouble swallowing. So all of those things are hurdles, and they put more strain on, should it be done this way? Should it be done that way? Is there a quicker way of doing it? Is there a way that's more humane? Etc., etc. It's a difficult one. And the pads. So going back to that, we still haven't had an answer, and each week goes by. My sister's had to fork out about 20 quid. You do that by 5-week months, you work out the figures on that, and you only get so much money from the government, like attendance allowance, to do that, which means that the strain then goes to the other carer, the son, and I have to buy some food and all the, you know, the papers. Papers for a month come to £52. But what you have to understand with this, I wouldn't have it any other way. My mum needs something, I'll find a way. Do I need to diminish something down more? If I have to, I will. Everybody has something that they need to keep them going. For me, it's films and games and all that sort of stuff, like Marvel comic stuff, related stuff. And if I was to take it all away, what's there to live for? So you just diminish your hobby down, but never take it totally away. You take it away and it's going to be, what's the point in this for yourself as a human being? So you diminish things down. You don't shut it off, because there will be that other side. And then you've got a mammoth task of catching up. Yeah. And as a collector, that's not the situation you want to be in. So you keep, it's like a dripping tap. It's a trickle rather than that floodgate of everything. Oh, just have everything. Anybody that's watched this blog knew that at the end of the blog I used to show the stuff I'd got. And those days are gone. You know, there's 1 or 2 items at best, because the things that you don't see are the things I'm buying for my mum, like a Tupperware containers, or a tray to cook a better meal, like mince or mash or whatever it is, you know, saucepans, utensils, in other words, to make life better. And the things that you want to buy are going up in price for everybody. Gas, electricity, watching TV costs an awful lot of money. And you have to look at those things and go, what can I diminish any more? And what can I push more with the money that I'm taking away from this? And is there any savings that I can have at the end of it? And it's the savings part that hits the most. I don't save anymore. I've got no money to save. But I've got to keep my life going, and I've got to keep my mum going. And mum is the priority. So it's a no-brainer. And that's what I do. So I don't necessarily spend an awful lot of money now on my hobbies, is what I'm trying to get at. So, yeah. So the pads, yeah, my sister's holding on to those while I take the responsibilities of some of the under ones, because obviously I've only got a sort of an amount of slush money to do things, which is recognised by my sister, so that's great. You continue. I'm out and about with the wife, so another couple of quick questions. Number 1, I know that you enjoy the boxing. I wonder if you saw the Tyson Fury boxing event last week. Now, this was mentioned in the 20th Century Gaming stream, and it was a paid thing, I think, and so I watched it a couple of days after, and I enjoyed that. But you put, in particular, did you see the British heavyweight fight that was before the Tyson fight? Now, that I only saw highlights of. Never saw the whole thing. Maybe it's me, but the guy who was the holder of the belt was really poor. Do you think that there is a real lack of stars at the moment? And absolutely there is. Now, it's great when you've got someone like Tyson Fury, even if you don't like him. There was a lot of people that didn't like Muhammad Ali. Or George Foreman, or any of those great boxers. A lot of people didn't like Tyson, thought him very antagonistical, in for himself. But that's boxing, isn't it? But they were characters, and they were characters that kept the sport going, and you could see the quality in them. I see boxers like Anthony Joshua and that, and I just feel that they're a bit stagnant. I even though I'm very proud to be, you know, a British citizen, I don't see the push for me to go, come on, like it was with Frank Bruno, who never could get that over that final hurdle until that one event. You know, he was always that one that you go, come on, you can do it. All it takes is one punch, and that's all it takes. But you saw that there was some quality there. I see these people and they seem very formative. You know, it's like, I'll do this jab and this hook or whatever. And there doesn't seem to be any character in them. They could be anybody. Just a name. Because you don't see the character much. Especially in the ring. You know, when you saw Muhammad Ali, you know, he'd dance, infuriate, slip the jab in, all of those sort of things, because that was his thing. George Foreman, it was power. You know, and you know, when you look back at those with Tyson, it was overhead stuff. He was small, and you just knew that it didn't matter whether you were a giant, he was going to get you. And with Tyson Fury, it's more about his character in being a gypsy or that, but we know a little bit more about his life, and you can sort of root for him even if you don't like him. And I don't think you can do that with certain boxers, and I would probably say that that's what you're talking about with this other fighter that you talk about. I can't even remember his name. Just shows you how much I'm following it. But I did see the highlights, and I did go, oh, all right. But that's all I did. I didn't go, oh, I want to watch him from now on. I remember my dad introducing me to Hatton. And suddenly we were going to boxing matches together when he came up to see me in Manchester. And then suddenly I was following him, and I was spurring him on when he was abroad, protecting his belts or trying to win a new one, and going, yeah, come on, we can do this, you know, and then feeling the pain when he didn't and all of that. Don't see that in modern boxing. No, don't really get that same feel. So that gives an answer. 2, most 4K disc menu systems are very basic. Do you miss the animated menus from older Blu-ray and DVD releases? And I'm going to go one step further here and say HD DVD. The menu system in the HD DVD I was so impressed with. It had these little boxes, and you could press this button and it would go on the internet and find this information and bring it in and all of this sort of stuff. And yeah, 4K, stick it in, menu down the bottom, play, chapters, setup, that's it. With possibly a loop of a video. Mostly, though, it's a static picture. And you're going, what's this? But I never forget when I'm watching a 4K film that it's been brought to my attention a million times that the more you do something clever at the beginning, the more space you're taking away, and you want the bit rate and the sound quality to be the thing. And it's all about watching the film. The film is the importance, not the menu, not the presentation. It's all great if it's brilliant, but if the film is at the best quality, that's the thing. Because that's what you bought it for, ultimately. So, yeah. I miss it, but I recognise it's the film in the end. But yeah, HD DVD menu system was brilliant. Loved that. Blu-ray had a similar thing, but it went away very quickly. 4K even diminished further. So yeah, I'm not enamoured by 4K discs at all. That's it for now, you say. All the best to you and your mum, and thank you very much for that. That's a brilliant one to come out with, and absolutely marvellous. Thank you. So, salute, and we move on to another YouTube creator, Colin Jones, aka Ponder, who you know is somebody I'd love to meet. We've talked. He's been on my channel. He's a moderator to many friends' channels. I'm less so a moderator now of friends, because getting to see them on the time that they're streaming is very difficult. But I loved my time doing that. But it just shows you the quality of someone if you're giving them the power to be somebody to look out for you. Great guy. And he's put, I forgot to use a placeholder this week. I hope it gets through. Yes, it did. And you've put, I hate being bipolar. It's fantastic. Get that? Hate being bipolar. It's fantastic. Yeah. Seriously, though, I do feel for those with neurological conditions. I swear most flat earthers are just trolls desperate for a reaction. I feel that same way now. Their argument is pretty much gone. Good to have a free care system in place. It sounds like the left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing. And yes, it's administration. Those dealing with people are also hampered by the same lack of organisation, but they are the only ones we can give the feedback to, and that's very true. And we try and call them, but it's very difficult, and then it doesn't make any difference because you're trapped into what they can provide. Sending my regards to your mum as always. Thank you very much for that. Until recently, I thought we'd have people on Mars by 2035. Now I don't think it will be in my lifetime. Maybe not even in this century. The political climate is more unstable than the actual climate, and stability is needed to provide the foundational support required for such a mission. Too many problems to solve with no real effort to solve them due to financial constraints. And exactly what I was getting at, really, but said much better by you, I have to admit. Everything that you said there is totally what I was trying to get across. So thank you so much. You continue, the M4 near me has had the speed reduced by 50 miles an hour for a number of years. There are accidents reported there almost daily. So I say the evidence shows that the speed reduction doesn't improve safety, quite the opposite. Also, the number of EVs on the road is increasing, and reducing speed for them doesn't reduce emissions because they don't have any. What they really need to do is start tracking and fining those who drive too close to the vehicle in front, because that's far, far more dangerous than speeding. And it is. You remember all of those TV commercials, the info commercials that said, look at the chevrons, keep one chevron behind, all of that sort of stuff. And we don't have enough of that. And we've just had a report on the news that says that uninsured drivers is up by 20% on last year, which was an astronomical year in itself. I don't think we're quite at the mark of half the cars on the road are insured and half are not. But it wouldn't surprise me that in 5 years' time that will be the case. When it comes to all the other stuff, I think that the rules do actually state, though, Colin, that you go at a slower speed, the emissions is less. We can't just turn around and say there are now more EVs on the road. The majority of the cars are not EVs. So we have to look at that and go, yeah, this would help even more. I will say that. But you're absolutely correct. The government has pushed EVs. We move forward with a country that will be totally on those cars by a certain year. I think it was 2035, should I say. But I don't see it in 9 years' time that all of them will be electric by then. I still think we will still have hybrids. But that's just an opinion or a feeling. The book in my last week's comment is Sentenced to Prison. On the planet, the ingenious life can create just about anything, even technical stuff, by growing it. The most intelligent are very friendly and helpful. Yeah, an idyllic community where most of the films that I've got the most enjoyment are dystopian futures. That's probably the more realistic look based on how we see life at the moment. So we look at always as life as being dystopian rather than idyllic. So yeah, what else do you put here? I also love computers, but I do like to keep work and fun separate, which is why I deliberately don't work with them in my work environment. There are many good uses for AI, but what's most publicly visible and unavoidable isn't the one of those good ones, for sure. Yeah, because we talked a little bit, didn't we, last week in regards to AI use, which is always cropping up. So go back and look at that blog for that information. And you've got a question. My question: of all the Amiga models made when the original Commodore was still a thing, which do you think was the best and why? Wow, now that's a difficult one, because the one that I would mention to be the best isn't necessarily the best. In fact, it will probably be one of the worst. But you have a nostalgia element, and you have a bit about how much you learn with that machine. That's the A1000, because I'd come from a Commodore 64 background. I'd worked in a school where it was mostly PETs or Apple IIe's, and here was this system with a WYSIWYG system. What you see is what you get. a GUI interface, graphic user interface. And not only that, I was learning about all different graphic modes, now they were made up, and sound, and everything suddenly became more tactile. And that's all based on the very first computer I got. And so therefore I have such a huge nostalgic for the A1000. But is it the best? Well, no. When I moved up then to the A2000, it came with a video toaster. And when I moved up to the A4000, there was an adapter for it. I skipped the A3000. Don't know why. So the A2000 was the thing that I used the video toaster for, and the video production stuff on that machine. And the A4000 I only had for 6 months, because by then the PC was apparently going to be the machine of choice. So the A2000 was again a very big learning curve. So that my very best one is the very first one, and it was the one where the world was introduced to this configuration. And it was then copied and copied and copied all the way through the life spell of the Amiga. So I've got to turn around and say the A1000, haven't I? But was it the best? The A4000 you would consider to be the best, the newest, the most modern, the most productive. But the things that I was being produced on, I could do on the earlier machines. So, yeah, I'm going to go with the A1000. And I know it's the wrong answer, but it's still a great machine, full of nostalgia for me. And that's the end. So, and I think I gave the reason why there. Mostly nostalgia and the learning curve. So thank you so much, and salute, my friend. Not more now to read out. We got Martroid. Oh, by the way, when it comes to Colin, salute, my friend. Go and have a look at his channel. A great YouTube creator. Definitely worth your time. Martroid doesn't have a channel, but he's put, okay, Del, I know you cut your teeth on classic micros like the Commodore VIC-20, just like I did back when loading a program felt like an achievement in itself, and it did. So here's a question. Despite all its limitations, what do you think was it about the VIC that made it so memorable and influential in those early days of home computing? Cheers, mate. Well, I can only go by me rather than why it was a success or why it failed, depending on your view. I'd had consoles like the Atari 2600, a video pack I had as well, and I was going to the arcades. But my early recollection of computers was the ZX80, the ZX81, the Spectrum. And I could see the change in pace for those machines, but I stuck with the Commodore. So it was very, very influential as a device in itself. Just trying to think how else can I expand this. Well, when it came to the ZX80 and the 81, it had its flaws. Pressing the button made the screen flicker and all of that because of the way that screen update works. Because it had no real chipset. The VIC-20 had a VIC chip, a sound chip, and other onboard chips to do certain stuff with, which was brilliant. And the ZX, like I say, the ZX80 didn't have that. The VIC-20 did. The VIC-20 was colour, had sound. You could type things in on a proper keyboard. All of that in that structure made that machine a godlike machine for me. To others that have only discovered it through emulation, it's very difficult to bring nostalgia into something you never had nostalgia for. But bear that in mind when you buy another machine. Do I need this other stuff? And I'm going to turn around and say you probably don't. So thanks very much and salute for that. And again, I won't be a few seconds. Sorry about that, but I had to take some more painkillers. I was in a bit of pain, and hopefully you can see that I'm a little bit brighter. But I was talking about the VIC-20, and again, this is where nostalgia will probably come into my mindset rather than actual truth. But I moved away from a ZX80 and a ZX81, which was black and white, and the Atari was a games console, which I loved, but it really didn't have the push I needed for me to embrace it and go, wow, isn't this absolutely fantastic? It was at the beginning, but then things like 112 different variations of Space Invader, say, was not really pushing it for me. And I'd gone past Dixon's and Curry's. These were shops in the high street and in precincts. And I've been reading for quite a few months in magazines the VIC-20, and I saw the keyboard and thought, wow, just think if you got this many keys, what things would be like with it, typing in things, all this sort of stuff. And I started going into those shops and typing in simple little programs to change the border and stuff. And so I pushed hard and hard for this VIC-20. And I already knew that it had this chip for graphics and this chip for sound and all that sort of stuff. And it was a bloody expensive machine. And I basically embraced it. And when I got it, I was reading the manual. The manual was a spiral-bound thing of beauty at the time. And I was reading up about it and how sound was generated and how many octaves it had and all of this sort of stuff. And the games were on cartridge just like before, so I saw those and went, wow, just look at this. This is actually pretty good. And then as you know, months and years go on, and I bought a tape deck for it, and there were other people that had one, specifically a neighbor that worked on the American Air Force base, that introduced me to disk drives and things like that I only saw at school, and now we're on a home system. And he had access to bulletin boards and things like that, that it was suddenly so expansive that my hobby and my enthusiasm grew astronomically. It then moved on to the Commodore 64, ultimately to Amigas and PCs. Consoles never went away, don't get me wrong, and gaming, but the kick was the VIC-20. And I hope that sort of like gives you a sort of a subtle answer. It might be something that I'd like to write a whole chapter on at some point, the VIC-20 years for me, because there's a lot to fill in the blanks for. You see what I mean? But I hope that's good enough for now. So we then move on to Robert's Retro Gaming, the last comment here, and it's put, hi Del. Martroid, salute to you. He's put, hi Del, I hope you are able to get the medication for yourself sorted out. That's a huge pain. Your hair looks good. Now come on, you don't look much like Shrek, more like Fiona. Oh. Well, in later years she was green as well, so there you are. Anyway, thanks for the shout out. I do that every week, matey. I meant to put another comment in on the re-upload, but I ended up forgetting all about it. My wife and I were away last week and busy doing things. That's perfectly fine. I'll mention this at the end, by the way. And you put, to close, I hope all the things have gone as well as could be hoped this week. All the best to you and your mum. So just to come back onto the comment thing, not everybody can comment. Everything's going on in people's lives. And I've never wanted the comments to be I need to do that this week because I do it every week and the guy needs encouragement. You do it because you have something to say, or you wanted to show that I'm in your thoughts, or whatever. It shouldn't suddenly become an OCD thing, you know, an compulsive disorder that, oh, I didn't do that this week, you know. It's nice, but it shouldn't be a stay point because, oh, I need to do it because I do it every week, you know. As much as I want as many comments as I can have and as many questions, they make me think, they give me encouragement to do stuff. One thing I haven't done on my channel is a poll. You know, a poll that says, what would you like to see more of? Would you like to see more blogs? Would you like to see more gaming, more video, films, TV, more soundtracks, more Marvel related stuff? And maybe I should do that, you know. The trouble is then I think then people would expect it. And if I don't get out to do that, then of course it was a waste of time, and it probably hurts the people that took their time out to say, well, what the bloody hell did I vote for them for? It's why I rely on comments, because they encourage me to go, oh yeah, I want to see more of that live stuff and all of that. Because it was in a passing comment to me rather than a table that seems to instruct me, yeah, you got to do this. Do you see what I mean? So I'm always thinking of you guys really on that. Of course. And the comments, of course, give me constructive reasons to do it. I've never been in favour of the thumbs up, thumbs down thing. Tells you nothing. Numbers mean nothing to me anymore. So, yeah, I rely on the comments a little bit, but not to the point where I want people to get into a regime because for regime's sake. Do you see what I mean? So salute, my friend, and you know I love your channel. And we'll talk about that a little bit later on. So we now get to the watched on YouTube. So we're getting to that stage, and you know that this watched on YouTube is always the section that is the general. You know, it's the general section. It's not under one particular banner: technology, TV, films, all of that. But there are 4 groupings for the first, you know, the 4 channels that I watch every week religiously, because they cover just about everything that I love. So we've got This Week in Retro, Tech Moan, Gadget Show, and Chronologically Gaming. This Week in Retro, as always, has 3 subjects. It had Undiscovered Text Adventure. Then we've got New Life for PlayStation and Wii, and Video Editing Like It's 1999. So all of those I really enjoyed. The Undiscovered Text Adventure was really good, because I'm into the text adventure, but I do know of the EXO project. The rest of the stuff equally is interesting. I urge you to go watch it rather than me explain what each of those chapters were, because you learn that way, and of course the channel deserves your watch if you're into the retro scene for technology. So yeah, Techmoan, I knew that there wouldn't be anything this week because he mentioned last week that he's editing together now stuff that he's been working on, which is why we had the videos Tat 1 and Tat 2, which was a load of stuff that he'd bought just for channel's sake in regards to stuff that he has behind his shelf and that you see in the background. So I knew about that. Gadget Show, though, had 2 new videos this week. Gaming flops that cost billions, and Apple glasses are coming. And I must admit, this Ray-Ban type wearing stuff, it seems to be building up a lot of traction, a lot of steam. I'm not sure where I fit with it, because I saw the, what was it called? Something glass. But it died a death. Eyewear, which you could see text on and it could record your life. I know that film studios hated that, putting more detector software to see that you were recording a film that you shouldn't be recording. So I don't know how much traction Apple glasses are going to have, but I take it they've gotten around all of that or worked with those cinemas and so forth. I know that it shouldn't be a thing now, actually, because when you go into a cinema, you actually got the physical media release of it within about 2 or 3 months. You're not really going to, people are going to go and see the film regardless of it, really. So, yeah, it's still there in the background, but I don't think it's that big a thing. Chronologically Gaming, he's still in December 1982, but he's got to the point where he reviewed a game called ICBM Attack, which was done on the Bally Astrocade. I think it was called the Philips Video Pack over here. So I never saw ICBM Attack, but it looked all right. It was all right. 1982, there were far lot better stuff out there, so understood. So moving on from the big four, I watched a channel called One Media. They did a trailer for a film that's coming out in April, Spaceballs, and it's called, the film is not called Spaceballs, The Search for More Money. It's called Spaceballs, The New One, which Mel Brooks lovingly turns around and says, I found the money, it was in a basement. But it's called this now because it's the old one, but newer. So it's the new one. And I thought, that's how you do a title. You know, basically, all this bollocks, multiverse, all of that sort of stuff, which drives me bonkers as much as I'm a Marvel fan. Endgame and all of this sort of stuff. The new one just fits that film absolutely. So yeah. Moving on, we got to Geek's Handbag, a channel called Geek's Handbag. That intrigued me, but it appeared in my alert box, and it was a British guy that's over in America, and he went to something called a half-price bookstore. It's actually called that. And he went in, and it was the hugest store I've seen for books, and it also sold vinyl, and it sold gaming, all that sort of stuff. But it was a huge thing with all little individual sort of like blocks of things to sell, with some bookshelves on the walls, and it had a load of Doctor Who Target books, and I used to collect those. I collected them to the point where I did get a Kindle. I think I've still got my Kindle. See if I can pull it out. I'm pretty sure it's here. It's covered in dust. Here we go. So I read all my Doctor Who's on Target, but then I bumped into the Kindle, and here's my Kindle with a screen protector. Just get rid of this if I can. There you are. So you can see my Kindle. In its case, its leather case. Do you remember that with the kickstand? It was one of the early ones. I used to love the display on it. I don't even know if I've got that type of display anymore. But I've got a screen protector, and I never put the screen protector on, so it's still got the screen protector for the leather pouch on it. No, there we go. Look, you can see how I keep care of things. Look at this. Right, so here's a Kindle from one of the very first Kindles that ever came out. No scratches, no marks, absolutely perfect. And yet this was a thing that went around with me for years and years and years to work after I had my operation on sciatica. So we're talking 2007, 8, somewhere around there. And loved it. And then all of a sudden stopped. I suppose it was mobile phones that you could read books on without your Kindle. But the Kindle was brilliant. Loved it. Ought to go back to that. But anyway, so going back to this Geek's Handbag, it was a a store, and it had no end of these books, and you could buy them for, and he was saying himself, you could buy these Target books for less than $2. And he went in and he bought a load. He loved them so much, he went back and bought a load more. Books. Love books. Never get rid of books. The Kindle was great, but I'd still prefer the book than anything else. But it was nice just then, just thinking about my Kindle. My God, I ought to charge this up and have a little look to see what books I was reading at the time. Just goes to show you, doesn't it? Right on top of that, by the way, this Kindle was my reference book to my first DLS camera, my EOS 700D, which I haven't got anymore. I moved up from my 700D. So, yeah, just goes to show you, really, what I was doing back then. It's like a time capsule looking at some of these things. Moving on, though, the next channel was Cellureal Entertainment. They did a history of the Marvel Hulk cartoons going all the way back to the very early days of those types of cartoons that were more out of the comic books, and they just animated one arm or just moved the mouth, and it was the Kirby art or the Dick Ayers art. So it was a year before the Spider-Man cartoon came out of the 60s, and it went all the way up to the Hulk cartoons of now, which, to be quite honest, I had more nostalgia and feelings for the early stuff than I do the newer stuff. The newer stuff's abysmal, really. It's things like Hulk packs and things like this, and Hulk and the Thunderbolts or whatever it is. I much preferred it was the Hulk, and basically he was gamma radiation altered him. He had one friend that knew his secret. He always tried to hide it under great stress. He turned into this brute. The army were after him. All of that, much better than this Hulk and the Thunder Corps or whatever it is. Or Hulk Smash was one of the cartoons, I think it's called. It lost its way, I think, from the mid-90s. The show that came out after the X-Men and Spider-Man 90s cartoons. The 2000s are atrocious, cartoon-wise. That's a whole new bracket that I could talk about. Cartoons that were for kids in the 2000s compared to what we had in the 80s and some of the early 90s. And the 70s was also a time of huge growth for Saturday morning TV on NBC and that sort of stuff. So yeah, then this has been all over the internet. But moving on, the channel that introduced this to me was Mad Little Pixel, and I've watched his channel before because he does a lot of the early console stuff, you know. But they've introduced or announced a new Neo Geo core, and the channel was called Neo Geo AES is back. And if anybody knows me, knows I did have a Neo Geo, and it was an AES, and it was in the early 90s, and it was a co-bought thing with a friend of mine, which eventually he moved away and we had to sell it. And the first 3 games I had for it were Magician Lord, what's that shoot 'em up, AES2 or something, I forgot what it's called now. Played it on Mainmeister's channel, and there was one other, I think we bought it later on. That's right, I bought for it Buster Move, but that was a few years later. These cartridges cost 200 quid each, and the console itself was like 400 or 500. So, you know, it was just one of those ones where it was the arcade in our home, basically. So we didn't buy too much. But yeah, they've come out with a new one, and it's not FPGA. This is a proper Neo Geo. I think done with custom chips, you know, so you could buy a 68,000 chip, you could buy a Z80 chip, you could buy the memory inside it. It's pretty much that. That's why it's a cartridge-based system. And they've actually introduced 10 games with it, so you can buy these cartridges, and they're nowhere near the price of the original cartridges, although they work in it. And it's also now got HDMI out, so it's been modernized slightly. And you can buy this thing in an anniversary edition or a pure basic edition, but you can also buy this one that comes out with the works, you know, all 10 games, the console itself, a joystick wired, a wireless joystick, a gamepad, all in a box with the 10 games in a collection case, for £1,000. And he was actually making it out. Look, he totaled it up, and the games alone come to 900 something pounds, like 950 quid, £50 or £50 short of £1,000, and the £1,000 gets you all the games plus the hardware, and that hardware comes to nearly 500 or 600 quid. So yeah, it's a bargain, but it sounds an awful lot of money. It all depends on how far you want to go with this. So yeah, I was really interested in that. Brilliant. Then there was a channel called Powerhouse MTE. Now I did this because with some of the trading card stuff that I've done just recently, I wanted to know how people were cataloguing their stuff. And there is a program called Manabox. And what Manabox is an app with a camera, and it scans your cards and puts it into a database, and that database tells you how much it's worth, the card, or what the current trend is, and catalogues what number of ones you got and which ones are missing. And then he talked about something called Moxfield, which is a web-based system which allows you to keep track of decks, because you can play games and all that sort of stuff. Marvel, you know, the Magic the Gathering and all that sort of stuff. But it talked about on there something called a scanner. This is what it is. It's a 3D printed thing. It's got a tray. What happens is you put the camera on top. See if I can do it. The camera on top. The cards get slid in here, landing in this box. The camera automatically takes the picture, goes on the internet, finds out the price, and adds it to your collection. And you can protect your cards because you can just stick your finger in and pull out the cards without hurting them. And I thought to myself, I wish I'd have had the design, because I might have asked my friend Colin to print that out for me, because it's just a 3D printed case. In fact, you can see the marks, look there. And if I turn it round that way, you can see the slide, because you can unslide this thing and split it and put it away in a box. I won't do that now. And of course, this is just a 3D container. And they're selling a load of these on Amazon for about £15. This one was the cheaper version, but they do ones with USB lights and all sorts of stuff. And I started to go through my binders and put them in, and no word of a lie, it priced them all up. The camera recognized them. There's a database. It went away and it brought it back, and I managed to scan 100 cards in 2.5 minutes. And then the longest job was putting them back in the binders. So you can imagine if you were if you bought a load of cards like in the boxes, you could open up the packets and just slide these things through, and then basically it would tell you how many you got missing, and you can put them into the binders afterwards. Marvelous thing. So that was what I concentrated on this week. So you can imagine how many videos I was looking at on how these, what they call card slingers are, and how this software worked. So that was brilliant. And then, of course, there was a couple of games that came up from Worth a Buy. I don't really watch him an awful lot, but he does come up in my alerts. And there was this game called Extinction Day. And it was a very cheap game. I haven't bought it, by the way, just so you know. Extinction Day. And it's a weird game where you have to destroy humanity. And you've got a picture of the globe, and you can fire nuclear rockets, and you can start a plague and all of this sort of stuff. And down the bottom, it tells you how much of humanity is left. Of course, humanity works out what you're doing, and it counteracts you, sends out all sorts of stuff that stops you from doing other stuff. So it's a battle to try and wipe you out. And it's harder than it actually sounds like. You'd think, I'll just send one nuclear blade, I'll send a big asteroid down, or whatever it is. You haven't got those types of options. You do have missiles, but they're ICBMs or whatever it is. So, basically, I thought it looked a really good game, and one if I had the money, I'd buy. I think it's cheap. I think it was only about $5, but it looked really good. So that was everything watched on YouTube. We now move to Film, TV and Soundtrack YouTube, and we get to Ian Hill, the Ramblings, who's a very big supporter of me, and I've mentioned him a lot today. So I'll just mention what he's actually brought out. And he's done this week my top 5 westerns 1989 to 93. Doctor Who review Galaxy 4. So that's the animated one, because that's William Hartnell still. And all of those, I think all but 2 actually. So it's a 4 episodes, and 2 of them I think are live. 2 are animated. But they've actually animated all 4 if I remember rightly. For Galaxy 4. X-Files review season 6 episode 7. What he had watched this week episode 14. And Live With Me episode 103, our 103rd live broadcast. So absolutely marvellous. Fantastic. And like I say, please go and support him. Go and have a little look. The description and the link are in my description. I then move on to Movie Collector, because Mondo didn't do anything this week other than for, I think, his Patreons. So we moved to Movie Collector, and he did a review of Suspiria, the 1977 Dario Argento film. He did a 4K review. And the funny thing was, that's exactly what I was going to do this week. So I mentioned on Wednesday I will get that done. And of course, Thursday, a lot of things happened for my mum. And it stopped me from being able to do anything. And I go back to work on Monday. But I have watched the film. I've watched it twice. I know exactly what I'm going to say. I've done an ident, a picture ident to advertise it. So all I need to do now is find a trailer that doesn't get copyrighted and do the actual video, which would take 10-15 minutes. So I'm not that far away from doing it. So it might well be that I'll be able to complete that before I go back to work. So we'll see. But it was strange that Movie Collector went and brought it out the same day I was going to, and so I stopped. But I will do that. What brought great delight for me was just Joshings is back. You may remember a couple of weeks ago I happened to mention that my remorse that Josh, who used to be called Through the Lens, had turned his back or was moving away from doing movie reviews, and he's changed his mind and come back. He still is in total 100% with his job, his hobbies, what he needs to do, selling some of his collection that he never really watched. But he's now back and he can go to the cinema and do some reviews, and that's absolutely marvellous. So glad to see that live video that he did this week. He also did a review of the new Mummy film. And it was the episode was called New Mummy, Movie is Grim. So, like I say, a couple of videos for you to see there. We're moving on to Muckman Movies. Jamie, my friend, he went to a horror fest. So he did a video called My First Leeds Horror Fest. So he went to Leeds, where he lives very near to, and met Caroline Munro, had a conversation with her, and showed us around the actual festival event itself. Brilliant, loved that. Then I watched Man vs. Film. He did a review of The Invincible 8 on Blu-ray, a 1971 review on the Eureka Classics label. That was very interesting. I came up on my alerts and I went and had a little look and enjoyed that. And then we've got my two norms, which is Commode on Film and Commode and Mayo's Take. They're two independent channels. On Commode on Film, he did Kubrick's worst film. I won't ruin it for you, but go and have a look. And then he did some reviews of Glenrofen, Wizard of the Kremlin, Rebuilding, and the top 10 films this week. So there are a number of things there that were interesting for me. I'm very interested in Kubrick, so that was brilliant. And the last thing to talk about is Game and Tech YouTube, which is my friends that have their own channels and all of that sort of stuff. I know them very well because I talk to them outside of this blog and in my own Discord and through other communication methods. And we start off with Down the Rabbit Hole, my friend from Canada, very much royalty. He did an episode called My Cat Jinx Fights Pokemon in No Man's Sky. So he did a No Man's Sky type video where he was showing off one of his pets that he's got in the game, and they can now battle each other on a sort of platform inside the game. And he did a review of a game that's coming out shortly, a Game Boy Color game, which a coder has reached out to Down the Rabbit Hole to do a review, and it's called Pain Will Prevail Over Gain. And it looks very interesting. He was having a few problems with his video capture device, but it came across perfectly all right for me. Brilliant. Robert's Retro Gaming, the 100% king of Canada for Atari, royalty on here. He did lots of reviews. He did Dwarf Fortress Classic Episode 34, Minecraft Play Episode 189, some Pico 8 gameplay of a game called Power Swarm, C64 gameplay of something called Spelunker. Sorry. That's all right, Spelunker. I've written it in 2 words. It's Spelunker, which is an old game. I remember playing that. Really loved my time with it. It's been redone on Steam many, many times. He did an Atari 2600 review of Video Pinball, which was interesting because pinball was still in its infancy back then. And then he did Atari's 8-bit gameplay of Reverside 2 and a game called Typo. Some of those games I've seen before on Steve's Gaming, but it was always entertaining to watch him do his own take. And speaking of Steve Still Plays Games, who I just mentioned just now, he had nothing this week, but that's purely probably because of life stuff going on in his life. He is alive. I've seen him in Discords, so it's great to know he's all right. Then we get to 20th Century Gaming himself, and he did a live on Friday and Saturday, so that was brilliant. Really enjoyed that. And then we've got Wee Bob, who did another episode of Project Zomboid, episode 6. So he's done 5 others, and I really do like those because he uses actors' voices to narrate his gameplay, which I think is an inspired idea. Moving on to Colin Jones, aka Ponder. He did a Mainmeister High Score Kerfuffle round 5, which is brilliant. Just shows you that we're into round 5, so it's coming along nicely. And then of course my old mate Mainmeister did a Sunday live about Elite Games. He did a Wednesday live stream, and he also did a Friday Waffle parts 1 and 2. And that's all I've got written down for my blog, and that's the end of this blog. So I just want to say thank you to everybody that's watched, and we've got to nearly the 2-hour mark, so it's worked out quite well. I'll just show you the overhead cam because some things did arrive this week. One was a suggestion from somebody who visits Wee Bob's channel on a Wednesday and told me that I could get From Beyond the Grave very cheaply on Amazon So that's exactly what I did. It was a tenner. So that's brilliant. And a steelbook that I must have forgot to cancel, and I'm in two minds about whether I'll send it back. It's called The Housemaid. It's a steelbook. You can see it's really quite nicely decorated. But this J card and some extras, I think, in it take away some of the aesthetics of it. It looks perfectly fine. And as I said, thanks very much for watching this blog. Just hitting back on here to get back to the right camera. There we go. And I don't know if actually I did that right, actually. Let's go to the overhead cam. I think I did it to the camera in front of me. So the housemaid is here. There it is. Steelbook. Looks nice. Upside down there. I don't know why. But very nice. So, sorry about that little cock-up. Just goes to show you that got things on my mind. And with that, I'm going to say thank you, and I hope you've enjoyed this. It was entertaining for me. Gave me the ability to vent. And, yeah. Until the next one, guys and gals and everybody else in between. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.